It was like a Hollywood action movie last night. A gang of heavily armed robbers mounted roadblocks at Postin Junction on the Winneba highway and attacked any vehicle that reached the robbery zone. An eyewitness who spoke to JoyNews off camera said for more than an hour, policemen who had been deployed to quell the attacks looked on helplessly as their weapons failed to function. Listen to this victim who was narrating her event. Well, this victim said that some persons may have been killed in the bush as multiple shots were fired. Residents have been calling for security to curb the increasing cases of robberies in the area. My colleague Maxwell Adbadba is at the robbery scene and joins us with more. Good morning, Maxwell. Maxwell, good morning. Can you describe to us the current mood in that area?
Well, a lot of the residents we've been speaking to are not really surprised about what happened sometime yesterday. We told it happened around 6:30 p.m. They are not surprised because of what they have described as the lack of logistics for personnel here at the Gomwa-Domnase police station. Some of them that we've been speaking to tell us that the police officers here who police 29 communities here do not have any vehicle. They talk about the lack of logistics for the personnel here. So when we got opportunity to speak to the district commander here, that was the first question we put to him about how the lack of logistics, is affecting the work of the personnel here. And he actually confirmed to us that that is the case. They do not really have the logistics. He says for the Gomwa-Domnase district headquarters, it is just one vehicle that is available to the police for patrols. He says that vehicle we are talking about is actually stationed at the Otsherkum police station because of the many cases of accidents that they've recorded on the Accra Cape Coast Highway. That vehicle, it's parked there, so it can respond in any case of emergency. So that's not a vehicle that we use for patrols. He says that vehicle we are talking about was actually donated to them by some benevolent persons. So, but for that donation to the police, and the entire Gomwa-Domnase district police will not have any vehicle whatsoever that they would use for their patrols. So he says the entire district, which has 29 communities, has just one vehicle which was donated to the police by some benevolent persons. We've been speaking to him also on details about what exactly happened yesterday, and he's been telling us that sometime around 6:30 p.m. Yesterday they got information that armed robbers had attacked some people, some commuters on a stretch at the Postin Junction. He says that particular spot has become very notorious for some of these activities. He says when they got there, they saw a lot of vehicles in traffic. They tried to inquire about what was happening, and they were told that some of the people who were in the vehicle at the time were attacked by some armed robbers. He says a man who was driving one of the vehicles was actually clapped. He was hit in the head with a club. He had to be taken to the hospital. When he was taken to the hospital, he was actually discharged this morning. Another driver, he said they spoke to, said the robbers actually fired into his into the tires of his vehicle. So that compelled him to stop, and then they got the opportunity to rob about 6 other vehicles. So he tells us that 2 people were actually injured in the robbery, and then 6 vehicles were affected. The occupants had their monies taken away from them, their possession, personal effects, all of that taken from them. 2 people who were injured, he tells us, have all been discharged this morning. We are picking information that the regional commander of the central region is arriving on the ground. The commander himself just left here some minutes ago. We are told that the Inspector General of Police is also arriving on the ground shortly to find out what happened yesterday, particularly also because this is not the first time that this incident is happening. We told that sometime in June, armed robbers actually took control over a portion of the road and then robbed people of their possessions. You remember that one of the people who was affected by that was, a Central Region-based musician. He talked about it. He talked about his experience. A lot of people share the experience on that stretch on social media. Facebook especially. So now that this has happened again, especially also because police has declared war against criminals, especially during this festive season, Operation, Father Christmas, we know it's in full force, it's in full gear. So the police personnel are not taking chances at all because they know that especially in December, the armed robbers, the criminal persons, people engaged in nefarious activities would want to increase their activities, and they're poised to stop them right in their tracks. And that's assurance that the commander of the Gomwa Domnase District Police has actually been given us anymore.
Maxwell, so when we hear reports that the police stood by helplessly looking on because their weapons were not working, what does that mean exactly?
Well, when we spoke to the commander, he disputed that claim out there that the police stood on helplessly. But he told us, he confirmed that it's true, they have challenge when it comes to logistics, when it comes to the personnel to even, do the job. They have a lot of challenges. So sometimes they have to rely on the Kaswa police, they have to rely on, they have to rely on other sources, to augment the kind of, support that they have here. In fact, when we spoke to the commander, he told us that when he first came here to the Gomwa Domnase District Police, they had just 7 police officers who were policing 29 communities. And he says that posed a lot of challenge, to them. He says around 6:30 p.m. when the incident happened yesterday, they were getting ready to deploy, their men to the ground. The men who were on the evening shift were getting ready to go to their various, posts where they've been deployed. So it's not really the case that the incident happened and police stood on helplessly because they didn't have weapons or anything. But the attention was drawn to it. The moment the attention was brought to the situation at the Postin Junction, they quickly rushed there and made sure that they took over or they took control of the situation and protected lives and properties anymore.
Right, Maxwell, do we have any idea if the suspects have been apprehended? Do we know who they are? Were they caught? Did the police chase them? Or are they just out there, really?
Well, as it stands now, we're told that no arrests. They've not made any arrests at this point. But we've been stationed here at the district, headquarters, and we've had a lot of eyewitnesses who've been walking in to recount the experiences, to recount what they saw, and also help police with investigations. I've been speaking with the investigator who is working on this case, and he's been speaking to some of the eyewitnesses who have been reporting here to provide police with the needed information, the necessary leads, that can help them, apprehend the suspect or the persons engaged in this. One of the eyewitnesses that I spoke to told me that, the people who attacked them did not sound like Ghanaians. He said they sounded like, foreigners. He asked them to lie down on the floor. When they lie down flat on the floor, they entered the vehicles and then took all their properties, took all their monies. So that information that they have, the little that they saw of the suspect or the criminals, is what they are providing to the police officers here. And police also is hoping that with the little that they can get, they'll be able to do more to apprehend the suspects engaged in this nefarious activity. I'll tell you what, at the Gomwa Postin Junction, where the incident itself happened, there are no street lights, there. Although during it's daytime, the people we've been speaking to here tell us that it gets really dark. It's usually pitch dark even around 6 p.m. At that stretch. So that's why it was easier for the robbers to go about, robbing the people even around 6:30 p.m. They say usually when they come around, they come late at night. But yesterday's case, was actually different. They came at 6:30, and at 6:30, they have started robbing and they have started firing, some, gunshots. Some of the residents who lived there closer to the crime scene tell us that, they had a gunshot, but there was little they could do because I mean, there was no way they could have gone there to save the people who were caught up in that robbery because the people, I mean, the suspects, the criminals were firing, guns, and they couldn't do anything to help the situation anymore.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you very much for bringing us that report, Maxwell, and we will bring you the updates on what's going on there in subsequent bulletins.